Good morning, card communities. RJ back with another video. Let's get to it. Today's random Mike Schmidt item of the day. I have two cards here, both from the base set of a product issued in 2002, the Tops 206. Obviously, a play on the T206 cards that everybody's so enamored with in the vintage card market, made to look just like it. There are a number of mini parallels with different backs, different colors, different serial numbers, and whatnot. So if you're a diehard collector like me, you will never probably get all of the cards that exist. But these are the base cards, standard size from the main set. Just showing them off. All right, I love this one here. Only Hank Aaron with 15 had more 30 home run seasons than Mike with 13. And only Babe Ruth at 12 had more than his 11 35 home run years. I'm not sure if that's been broken since. We are in an era of obscene home runs, and since this was 2002, you can imagine that in the past 20 years, somebody might have broken one of those records. All right, today's random baseball item of the day, in keeping with my theme from the week of showing off some mini books. I got another one here, same as always, just a little book I picked up at the Barnes and Nobles on the little rack at the checkout counter. Made, obviously, for that last minute gut decision to buy something, spend something. Baseball book of quips and quotes. Let's see what we got here. Babe Ruth. Gee, it's lonesome in the outfield. It's hard to keep awake with nothing to do. This is a famous quote from Sandy Koufax. Pitching is the art of instilling fear. And then Ted Williams. Baseball is the only field of endeavor in which a man can succeed 3 times out of 10 and be considered a good performer. I've heard that one a number of times in a number of different ways. So I have shown off my collection of mini books. I will do that again real quick for you. 3 little awesome mini books of baseball that I'm very happy to have, simply because I am such a everything baseball collector. Wanted to show that off to you today. Today's trivia question, have it there in front of me, a prize. Got something coming up a little later. Explain this a little bit more. This is, no lie, a 1975 Mike Schmidt O-Pee-Chee card. This is your prize today, people. If you can tell me this. Pitching question for you today. There are a number of different correct answers, but I want you to find for me one pitcher, and again, there are a number of different correct answers, who in his career collected at least 100 wins in both the American League and the National League. So, maybe one of the various pitchers who had 100 career victories in both the American and National League. Email me the correct answer. My email will be in the description below, along with a repeat of the question. And we will take a random pick from all the correct answers on Sunday, and the winner will get that 1975 O-Pee-Chee Mike Schmidt card, all right? And we are talking today about O-Pee-Chee cards. That's why I'm doing that, all right? I did a little bit of history. I'm going to show off some O-Pee-Chee things today. O-Pee-Chee has been around since the 30s as a Canadian gum company. They've produced baseball cards in the past, baseball ephemeral, products highlighting baseball players. Canada has been played up baseball's been played up in Canada, just like in America, for a long time. So it's not surprising that they would honor their local stars, but they certainly started paying attention to the major leagues when they started, barnstorming and touring and whatnot. Toronto is right across the lake, and Montreal right across the lake. A lot of Canadian towns, so especially up in the Detroit area, I'm sure some of those towns, Buffalo, Detroit, some of the Erie, some of those lakefront towns would come over and watch the American people play baseball, no doubt, no doubt. So O-Pee-Chee has been around for a while producing baseball stuff, but we obviously are most familiar with O-Pee-Chee as a baseball card producer that they just either it's a Topps or it's an O-Pee-Chee, they're the same card. Um, in a way that's true, but in a way it's not. So where did O-Pee-Chee come from? Again, it's been around for a long time, but in 1965, that was the first year that O-Pee-Chee entered into a licensing agreement with Topps. Essentially, they were allowed to use whatever image from the Topps company they wanted, and they printed their own cards up in London, Ontario. So they would take Topps's design, Topps's image, and just reproduce the card, but with a copyright date from London, Ontario, and they would release it in their own packs with their own gum up in the Canadian area. And that started in 1965. Now, the Topps set in 1965 was 598 cards, but the O-Pee-Chee was only 283. And it stayed that way for a while, where Topps would put out a big set of cards and O-Pee-Chee would put out less. Usually, in the early days, I think what it was is they just did a couple of the first print runs and then stop, because the card numbering in the early days was the same as the Topps numbering, but then they just stopped making the cards. Then, long about the late 60s, they started to put out more cards. They got up to 200. They went down to 196 throughout the late 60s, back up to 218 in 69. And they made a big splash with 546 cards in 1970 to Topps's 720 set. And then in 1971, they put out 752, which was the exact same number the Topps put out. So it really was the first of the mirror image Topps and O-Pee-Chee sets, which is what we kind of think of. We kind of look back at these O-Pee-Chee cards and assume that for every Topps there existed, there was a mirror image for the O-Pee-Chee card. But that's not the case in most years. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. In 72, they went back down. They didn't put out 787 cards, but O-Pee-Chee only put out 525. And then from 1973 through 1976, they're mirror images. Each one's a 660 card set. So I have here my two Mike Schmidt Topps cards from the set, base card, O-Pee-Chee, and the home run leaders cards 480 and 193, O-Pee-Chee. And here are my Topps cards, card 480 and 193. The difference is, if any, what you will see is a French version of whatever the little cartoon is, along with a French version of the words, complete Major League statistics up there. And then in the Home Run Heroes card, looking on the front, they didn't use French graphics to say home run on the front. On the back, though, it is, more, what was a double language. Year, année, player, jour, team, équipe, number, nombre, or year, année. So they had dual language for the stats. And at the bottom, again, you can see here the copyright date, Topps versus O-Pee-Chee, printed in Canada. And even the card stock is they used a different cardboard stock slightly. It was always a little more white than the Topps gray. I don't know why. I don't know where they chose to, but that's the way it was through most of the early to mid 70s. Then again, all of a sudden in 1977, they dropped. They stopped producing full sets, various numbers throughout the early 80s. And then they were very consistent starting in 1982. Starting in 1982 through 1989, O-Pee-Chee went standard 396. So I have here my O-Pee-Chee set from 1986. This is an entire set of O-Pee-Chee cards from 1986. They're all warped for whatever reason. But they were the standard cards, included a checklist card, but it had the O-Pee-Chee, there's Reggie card, had the O-Pee-Chee up top instead of tops. That's how you knew. But again, they were not one for one. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I showed you the 76s were number for number because they're the same number of cards. Here's my 78. Here's my 78 tops card. Card number 360 from tops. But the same card in the O-Pee-Chee was card number 225. And again, it's dual language in the little game thing as well as the stuff at the bottom. They had the troisième boot for third base down there. And again, the slightly whiter card stock as they would do throughout their production run for whatever reason. But again, all throughout the 80s, it was a 396 card set. I happen to have the 1986 set. Got that for like, $10, $20 at a card show many years ago. Don't have any other full sets. They just don't come up on the market too often. I'm not actively looking for them. Then, interesting thing, in 1990, Topps had gone up to Topps went up to 792 cards starting in 1982 and stayed at that for quite a while. So 1990, 91, and 92, Topps was putting out 792 cards, and O-Pee-Chee did the same. So if you're looking at your O-Pee-Chee cards in those years, you will see card for card that they did the same thing. It was, again, a mirror image of the set for every single card. Interesting thing again, in 1991, since everybody was going high-end, Upper Deck came out in 89, took the country by storm. 1990 was a learning curve. Really, nobody reacted too crazy to what Upper Deck had done. But then in 1991, everybody went high-end. Stadium Club came out. Studio came out. Leaf came out. All the high-end products flooded the market. O-Pee-Chee was no different. O-Pee-Chee still made the top set, but they came out with a high-end product called Premiere. A French version, French language version, geared, made in their own design. They actually took it upon themselves to come up with their own design. They did that twice. In 1991 and 1992, they came out with Premiere. And then, in 1993, O-Pee-Chee went rogue. They said, enough of this thing with Topps, we're going to do our own set. Here is the first ever fully O-Pee-Chee set in many, many years, since back in the 30s when they were doing their own stuff. They lost track of doing their own stuff, obviously, when they had the relationship with Topps. But in 1993, they came out with their own design. One of the things that's interesting about O-Pee-Chee, in 1993, I'm going to show off the basic card design. Very classy design, I think. A very simplistic. I love simple designs with not a lot of flair. Let the picture carry the card. Basic white border, simple name, Rangers and script. Okay, position down here and the card maker. Nice back. I'm always a huge fan of full career statistics on the back of cards. That's how I prefer. I don't mind the vertical. Fleer did vertical. Donruss did vertical a couple times. I like that a little bit, so that you don't have to pivot the card. But anyway, this is their first. This is what an O-Pee-Chee card looked like. This is not Premiere. There's a separate set called O-Pee-Chee Premiere in 1993. This is the O-Pee-Chee brand base set, flagship set O-Pee-Chee. Here is your Cal Ripken. You can see they changed up the color of the O-Pee-Chee background, but everything else, and the team name, everything else kind of stayed the same. One other thing O-Pee-Chee did a lot is they tended to not be shy about using a picture that didn't make any sense with a team trade. They would simply do this. So here's a card, Benito Santiago of the Marlins. He's in a Padres uniform. All they would do, they'd put the correct team up here, correct logo down there, and then they put this little name or little moniker in here. Now with the Marlins as of 12/16/92, and they had done this actually throughout their history, even back when they were making these 396 set cards, card sets back in the 80s. They'd put a little logo on here on the card somewhere, talking about a trade that had happened and explaining why the image didn't make any sense. You know, plus when they did those shorter print runs back in the 80s, they weren't doing the just like with this set here. All you will find in this set from '93 is cards. There's no lead leaders, there's no teams, there's no managers, there's nothing flashy, no subsets, no nothing. It was just the base cards, which to me is a little refreshing because you just want to see a good number of players in the thing. I mean, they had their checklist cards, obviously. That was still a thing. These checklists. They actually did the interesting kind of like this kind of annoys me. I don't like the people who have checklists per team. Maybe they like it. I like to see the checklist in numerical order, one through, in this case, obviously 396. They went back to the 396 format. I'm guessing 396 had something to do with the number of cards you could fit on a sheet, But one of the things, like I said, that O-Pee-Chee did was not include team cards, rookie cards, manager cards, league leaders, that kind of stuff. Topps was known to do that all the time. And in the early days when O-Pee-Chee started putting out cards, I noticed when I was looking at it, I don't have any cards from the '60s that are O-Pee-Chee. I've got nothing. So sorry I can't show you anything. But the numerical the number on the back of the O-Pee-Chee cards is spot on for the top cards up until a certain point, and then they just stopped. So you would have some team cards, some rookie cards, some manager cards, but not all of them. Some star cards, but not all of them. So I think they literally would produce only half of the set and then stop with the future print runs. They just wouldn't print anymore. And then later on, obviously when they got into the '70s and they were doing mirror image card sets, there's no thinking. They both companies put out 660 card sets that mirrored those each other exactly. That was from '73 to '76. Then starting in '77 and going forward through '89, Topps put out its 726 or 792 card set, would have you. O-Pee-Chee would do less, typically 396. And what they would do is they didn't print out the team cards, they didn't print out the highlights, they didn't print out the manager cards, they didn't put out any of the cards that weren't standard player cards. From my 1986 set here, there are just, other than the checklist cards, it's just the players. There's no subset of league leaders, of all-stars, of highlights from the year before, no World Series, no nothing. Just cards of the stars of the game. That's one of the reasons they were able to produce fewer, because they didn't have all the extra things. But obviously they also probably cut out some of the lesser-known players. They just had to in order to get 396 cards. And it also brought to mind something else when you think about it. I'm sorry, I'm rambling here. Certain cards were double printed back in the day. They'd always have cards that were printed twice. Some of the star cards in certain eras, there were twice as many of them. And the reason that was because in a print run they would have a certain number of cards. Well, then they'd have a print sheet that was a certain number of cards, and the full set wouldn't always be a multiple of the number of cards they could put on one sheet. So in order to make up for it, the final sheet would have extra cards of the star players. So they would double print the star players because that's what everybody wanted anyway. Anyway, just a little look back at collecting lore, so to speak. So anyway, that is my trip through O-Pee-Chee's history. I wish I had more O-Pee-Chee cards to show you. I could show you all my Schmidt ones, but that's a little boring. I could go through all the 86 ones I had, but again, that's a little boring. I could show off all the O-Pee-Chee cards, but if you've seen a Topps card, you've seen an O-Pee-Chee card. It really is no different for the entire run, other than when you get to these later sets, and O-Pee-Chee was still kicking it. I mean, they kicked it up until the mid '90s, and then they're gone now. Every once in a while, I shouldn't say that they're gone. I still see occasional O-Pee-Chee offering, so I'm not sure if somebody else owns the rights or if they're still throwing out occasional product here and there, because I did see some 2000s O-Pee-Chee cards recently. Anyway, so that is my trip down O-Pee-Chee land with you today. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget the trivia question. You can win that sweet Topps, or I should say O-Pee-Chee Mike Schmidt card right there. 75 O-Pee-Chee Mike Schmidt. So hope to have a lot of you entering that contest for that sweet card. All right. Again, I appreciate everybody watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all that jazz. I do appreciate your support as I try my best to support other members of this great card community. All right. Let's keep it rolling, people. Let's keep it going. Keep it growing. Congrats to those members of the card community who were recently inducted into the YouTube Hall of Fame. Shout out to Lou Rock. Big fan of Lou Rock. I know his channel well. I don't know a lot of the others, although I should say I think Reindeer Studio got in. Great channel there. Fantastic artist he is. So congrats to you guys. Thanks for stopping by again. Appreciate you all tuning in. Hope to see you again soon. Come back on Sunday for the trivia recap, all right? Thanks for watching, and take care.